Now, for more on what's driving the U.S.-India relationship, we're joined by Haiyan Wang, managing partner of the China-India Institute. Welcome back to the show.
Glad to be here.
Now, this is the first face-to-face meeting for Modi and Trump. What are the expectations for this two-day visit?
I think the two-day visit, the expectations are somewhat reasonable. And one is for the two leaders to get to know each other, to set the right tone, to build a personal rapport. And I think that also for Prime Minister Modi to really get a sense of Trump administration's policies and priorities. It is tough because we see a lot of unpredictability, uncertainties, and the swinging policy stands from one end to the other end. So I think that this is for Prime Minister Modi to regain a good grasp of where exactly India fits in the grand scheme of strategic priorities for the Trump administration. I also think that counterterrorism and defense cooperation are two very key concrete items, with India being the largest arms importer, and the U.S. definitely wants to gain its bigger share from that arms exports to India. So counterterrorism is another big agenda. But overall, expectations have not been set very high, and so far both sides seems to be pleased with the tone and the outcome.
We certainly saw them agreeing on things like innovation, and so certainly lots of room for agreement. Now, what about issues that may be a little bit more problematic? We know that obviously with these skilled worker visas that Trump wants to get rid of, and you have a lot of high-tech talent coming out of India.
Yes.
How do you see those two ideas meshing together?
I think that the H-1B visa issue has not been one of the top priority on this trip's the agenda. After all, it's the Congress who decides it. And down the road, it's going to be less of an issue. One is that Indian companies, IT companies, have realized that artificial intelligence at some point is going to replace a lot of the skilled low-level IT work, one. And two, as Indian IT companies become more global, they realize they have to be closer to the ground, serving the U.S. customers. Actually, they are building service centers right here in the U.S. and offering to create more jobs. That's certainly to the pleasing ears of Donald Trump. It's also, as the Indian economy grows, a lot of the IT opportunities will actually be opening up for Indian IT companies. So it's less of a thorny issue on this front.
And we certainly saw President Trump praising India for its growth, saying that he hopes that the U.S. would be in that same position soon. But he also talked about the trade deficit.
Yes.
Both countries want better access to each other's markets.
Indeed.
What do you think will develop there?
I think that for President Trump, reciprocity in trade is the key. Creating jobs for the U.S. workers is the key. And you know, though Prime Minister Modi's top economic agenda is making in India, and Donald Trump's top agenda is you know, America first and creating American jobs, there are a lot of opportunities for cooperation. At this point, as much as the trade deficits talked about, you know, for the U.S. trade with India, it is relatively small. A 30 billion trade deficit in goods and services altogether is not that significant. That is significantly smaller, 1/10 of that of the total deficit with China.
Right.
So I don't see it being a big you know, big thorny block in developing that economic relationship. And down the road, whether it's LNG exports, defense equipment exports to India, technology exports, building smart cities, building infrastructure. And there are a lot of growth areas for U.S. companies, and U.S. companies recognize that. And
to that point, ahead of the visit, in an opinion piece for the Wall Street Journal, Modi said that bilateral trade with the U.S., which already totals $115 billion a year, is poised for a multi-fold increase.
Yes.
Where does this relationship go from here?
It could go only higher. At this point, in terms of India's importance as an export destination, it is still insignificant. India is the 18th largest export market for the U.S. U.S. export to India, it accounts for a very small percentage, I think 1.5% of overall U.S. exports. And so, at this point, it is not that significant, and direct investment also is not that significant. But we must recognize that India is the fastest growing major economy. 10 years from today, India will become the third largest economy, right behind China and the U.S. So if we take a 10-year horizon down the road, looking at it from tomorrow's lenses, I think that India is bound to become one of the fastest growing export markets for U.S. businesses.
We certainly saw what happened with China, so we'll have to see what happens with India. Thank you so much, as always. Haiyan Wang, Managing Partner of the China-India Institute.